Good morning and welcome back to the virtual Big Day for week 6. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today across Australia. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Shorju Das Salmon, an intern at the ACS Foundation, and I will be your virtual Big Day co-host for today. Today, we have two presenters who both have development backgrounds, but chose very different career paths. We'll be hearing from Richard White, the CEO of WiseTech Global, a multinational logistics and supply chain company, along with Curtis Block from Animal Logic, who make awesome animated movies, including the Oscar-winning Happy Feet, the Lego movies, Peter Rabbit, and a whole lot more. Remember, you can always ask questions of either presenter during their presentations, no matter how trivial you think they are. Just hit the Ask a Question button on the bottom right, type something up, and we'll take care of the rest. First up today is Richard White. Richard founded WiseTech Global in 1994 and has been CEO and Executive Director since then. He has over 30 years of experience in software development, embedded systems, and business management, and over 20 years of freight and logistics industry experience. So please join me in welcoming our first presenter for today, one of the rock stars of the Australian tech industry, CEO and founder of WiseTech Global, Richard White, with Advancing Your Potential.
I hope everybody can see me. Welcome everybody. It's fantastic to be here today and to get an opportunity to talk to you about something that I'm really passionate about. Over the past 6 weeks, you've had the opportunity to hear from a lot of people about a lot of different types of careers in technology available to you and the amazing opportunities you have in those careers. All of this is true. What I want to focus on today is how a career in technology is an actual pathway to a wonderful life and about being a force for good. It's an opportunity to make you make a difference globally, and it's an opportunity to advance you to your true potential. I'm going to play a short video. So, my name is Richard White, and I'm the founder and CEO of WiseTech Global, a true technology company, a true global company founded in Australia. I have a passion for and an avid interest in technology, and I've had that for over 40 years, since my early days of high school. And in pursuing that passion, I've built a global company that is now worth over $7 billion. I'm also really interested in music, if you can't see the guitars behind me. When I was at your age, I taught myself to play and started a band. The band was actually pretty good and I played many gigs around Australia. However, I quickly realized that while I loved playing, for me, being just a musician wasn't a really viable long-term option. So I used my technical knowledge and my musical skills and I started my own guitar repair business, and then later, a stage lighting company, and worked with some of Australia's biggest rock bands. I'm sure some of you have heard of AC/DC and perhaps the Angels and Midnight Oil. These were people that I worked with and provided equipment for and technology for. I've always been very curious, and I love asking questions and thinking about how to solve problems and how to build things better. And that was the underlying reason why I got into technology and why I discovered software and engineering. Technology is one area where you can confront countless problems and solve those problems in new and powerful ways. And technology has become such an integral part of our lives. Sorry, I just went one forward slide, one too much, sorry. Just going back. But have you ever really thought about how dramatic technology has changed the world? Imagine living in a century where there were no mobile phones, no messaging, no digital cameras, no streaming video, and images were only shared in print. The personal computer wouldn't have been in existence. The smartphone didn't exist. So goodbye gaming. And the internet hadn't even been developed. So goodbye communications. How would you all feel about that? It's pretty hard to imagine, right? Some of these technology are products like your mobile that are made of many different components, the screen, the battery, the camera, all the components inside. Most of us don't really think about how all those things we use every day actually get invented, designed, and built and provided to you to buy. But that process is complex. And if it didn't exist, your life today would be very different and much harder and certainly much less fun. Let's just talk about logistics for a minute, an industry that we serve as a technology company. It is one of the oldest industries in the world and one that's worth a lot of money. It runs about $20 million of cost every year to move goods all around the world. And when the coronavirus hit, it also impacted the logistics industry. You're living in a time of rapid change that is happening on a global scale, change that will impact on nearly every aspect of your life and the lives of all the people you know and care about. Whilst that change is constant in technology, this current change has been brought about by the global pandemic that has hit the world so unexpectedly, including, it seems, the logistics industry, of which WiseTech Global and our technology platform CargoWise support. So that's very important because we play a part in the solution to a very big problem. The movement of goods around the world is a complex chain of processes and transport functions. Logistics may not sound as exciting as robotics and machine learning, cloud, data science or software engineering, but it's an industry where all these sciences and deep tech play a massive role. Never before has the importance of logistics been so clearly seen as right now. Suddenly, countries shut down, borders closed, planes became crowded, people entered isolation and businesses and shops closed. People needed to work remotely out of their homes. But regardless, there remained a critical need for essential goods, including food, the basics of life and medical supplies all around the world. How do we move these goods when the borders are closed, when there aren't enough planes flying to move the essentials and life-sustaining or life-saving goods? The saviour for all of us is the intense and agile fusion of technology and logistics processes which moved to adjust and adapt to allow all of us to eat, to remain healthy, and to pass through the pandemic as safely as possible. That's what WiseTech products help enable. Without the type of technology that we provide, the supply chain would not have been able to run. It would have collapsed and things would have been a lot worse. Here's a question for you. How much of international trade do you think is moved by ocean? Is it 40%, 65%, 90%, or some other number? Just think of that in your head before I tell you the answer. Well, the answer is that 90% of international trade runs by sea. So, of course, planes do fly a lot of high-value goods, but the vast volume of our world's freight moves by ocean. And this is one of the positive things that we were able to leverage in being agile in the coronavirus era. Airlines carry, in addition to passengers, something like 35% of international trade by value, but only a tiny amount by volume. Those valuable transactions include critical medicines and medical supplies, high-value technology items like phones and internet equipment. But most of that has moved into sea freight, and the sea freight companies have responded agilely using technology to adapt and to deliver as quickly as possible whilst the airlines were on the ground. Because around half of the world's air freight travels in the belly hold of passenger planes, when you ground all the passenger planes, things get pretty bad pretty quickly. But again, technology and agile logistics systems supported that technology change rapidly and created new solutions and new problems to a new problem in a few days. In fact, in the last 3 months, the world has moved through what would have been around 10 years of digital transformation, including transformation in digital logistics. And many people, including most of the logistics people needed to help us through the pandemic, needed to work remotely. So you needed a system that is cloud-based and accessible over the internet from everywhere at any time. And again, that is what WiseTech's products provide. We're doing that better and more by continuing to digitize the whole of the logistics process and the worldwide supply chain, developing a deeply integrated and truly global technology designed to meet the diverse needs of more and more of the logistics industry, and designed to help them digitize, to transform from paper to digital, from manual to automatic, from slower to faster, and better to meet the challenges, not just coronaviruses, not many challenges that will come to us. Our platform is called CargoWise One, and we're creating step by step the operating system for global logistics. We are building CargoWise with a team of around 1,000 software engineers and technologists, including software engineers, data scientists, product specialists, and user experience designers. We focus on how we can make that highly complex legacy process as modern, technologically infused, and as smooth and as simple as possible. We're doing that because we know technology makes a positive impact on the world around us. We intend to change the world, as we say, one innovation at a time. But how are we changing the world, and how are we a force for good? Today, we're helping the world's largest freight forwarders and logistic providers to transform their systems and get critical goods around the world as simply and seamlessly as possible. Through CargoWise, our core product, people can work remotely and automate much of the process from placing an order through to booking the movement of cargo, submitting a customs declaration to move across borders, and arranging for deliveries at destination ports. And all of that has continued to move very seamlessly, even though coronavirus has shut the world down in many places. Our technology allows businesses to plan, to execute, manage, track, build, and automate much of the process in near real time. With CargoWise, what would have been an enormous amount of time and effort is now automated, digital, efficient, and much faster and a much lower cost, meaning everyone gets their stuff faster and cheaper than it would be without the technology. Through our technology, we're taking monotonous tasks like repetitive data entry, unnecessary phone calls, email, web page lookups, paperwork, data verification, invoicing, and messaging out of the daily tasks of people. We're automating simple tasks and giving people the opportunity to work on meaningful things that they really love and they're really good at. Through applications of machine learning and data science or big data, CargoWise is automating these functions and giving people back time and a very enjoyable work. We are advancing human potential. One of the great things about continuing to build the power of CargoWise is that we can actually see it is solving the problems of the people today. But as with any technology, we need to think about what it can do in the future, years from now. And one area we're passionate about is the environment. Solving the problem of how our technology can affect change to the environment is all around us and deeply embedded in our views. The logistics industry uses trucks, ships, and planes to move goods around the world. That's millions of vehicles using fuel and creating carbon emissions. What if you could cut down the vehicle travel times, wasted journeys, truck waiting times? What about ensuring that every journey by air, sea, road had the optimal amount of freight and therefore use the smallest amount of fuel? How do you think we could do that? Anyone have any ideas? Do we have any comments from the audience? I'm not sure we can get those at this moment. Let's leave those for the Q&A at the end. We have search engines that predict what you're going to type. Entertainment apps serving you shows on music you'd like to, based on your preferences. GPS systems optimizing routes based on traffic feeds. What about technology that can monitor delays in shipping timeframes and stop vehicles from traveling too early and ensure that all capacity is booked and loaded? The path the vehicle takes is the shortest and most efficient for fuel. Our platform uses spatial technology, machine learning, automations to monitor shipment arrivals and then update schedules in real time so vehicles aren't sitting around waiting for something to happen and they're fully loaded and fully utilized. Not only does this cut down on the use of fuel, but it also cuts down the amount of carbon emission emitted by the vehicle. Times that by millions of trucks, planes and ships, and imagine the amount of environmental benefit created. These are really just some of the challenges WiseTech is solving today. And to solve these problems, you need to be curious and ask questions and teach yourself things. Learn by being curious. To have a healthy disrespect for the status quo, for the things that are there now, and ask the question, why aren't they better? Why aren't those problems solved? And be ready to challenge the way things are done to see if there's a better way. To be goal-oriented, to know what you want and what you're trying to achieve, and always adjusting to achieve that goal. To be passionate, to use that passionate energy to drive yourself. To be persistent and resilient. Don't give up, push through, fight for what you know. And be responsible for yourself, for your own actions and for your own success. Now, coronavirus has affected all of us, including the technology industry and the logistics industry. And it's also affected your future and how you will live your life. The way you'll experience things will be very different to your parents and grandparents. The way you learn will change. It's already changed, in fact, and today is a great example of that. But universities will change the way they deliver degrees, and the types of courses available will also shift to take account of the needs to constantly learn and build on the soft skills that you have. Learning is and will become even more a lifelong learning journey. It won't be an option anymore. You'll be getting knowledge continuously through new and different ways. And the job market is changing. The skills you need will increasingly move to more digital, so you'll need to be continuously advancing your potential, especially in digital skills. The 9-to-5 job working only in office will be a thing of the past. Remote working and flexible working arrangements are here to stay. Whilst we may well return to the office, it will never be the same, and the fusion of digital and work from home means that your first career job may well be partly from your home. All of this means you are living in a time of enormous opportunity, where drive, curiosity, tenacity, agility, passion and resilience will be critical factors for success. There are so many types of jobs available in the tech industry, and it's really about finding what interests you and leaning in and doing those interesting things. Whether it's about being a software engineer, a developer, a product manager, a cybersecurity expert, a data analyst, a cloud engineer, a user experience specialist, or a project manager, the choice is actually yours. You are fully empowered to make those choices. And these type of jobs will continue to grow, and the demand for more people and better wages will be much stronger than the old world jobs. Remember that technology should be a catalyst for positive change, not only for you, but on a global scale for the people and environment around you. You can be a force for good. Your future is in your hands, so let's advance your potential. I think we've probably got a little bit of time for Q&A, and I think we can do that through questions, and if our presenter can read out anything that's being asked, I'm very happy to try to answer whatever is being asked.
Absolutely. So we'll sort of start way back at the beginning of your career. What university did you go to, and what did you study?
I came out of, I went to Sydney Technical High School, which is in Perthville, quite close to where I live. And after graduating from high school, I decided I wanted to be a musician, a rock and roll star. And so I didn't go to university initially. I spent time as a musician, then doing guitar repair, then building lighting and staging equipment. And then I decided that I needed to do something about my education. And so I actually attended the University of Technology and eventually did a full master's degree in IT management and technology.
Wonderful. In regards to, I guess, your music, and everyone knows that you're quite a passionate musician, do you still play the guitar, and do you wish that you bought Kurt Cobain's guitar, which recently went on sale?
Kurt Cobain's guitar was, so I still play the guitar. In fact, you can see behind me there's a number of instruments and a keyboard and so forth, and I've got an avid desire to collect interesting musical instruments. Kurt Cobain's guitar was actually bought by a friend of mine called Peter Friedman, who is the inventor of the Rhodes microphone, very famous Australian invented microphone series, which is very powerful. And I actually spoke to a friend of mine, told me that someone had paid a lot of money for Kurt Cobain's guitar, and I contacted Peter. I said, I hear it's you, and he told me it was. He's got some secret plan that he won't tell me, but it's very interesting. I have a number of very collectible guitars. I own one of Prince's guitars, one of the famous cloud guitars, with all the certifications and verifications. And I own a number of guitars signed by a lot of different famous people. But I just like guitars and I like music, and I just do it as a kind of a hobby. It's my version of golf.
Wonderful to hear. Moving on to more about WiseTech and the company that you founded, what was the biggest skill that you needed to build a company as successful and as large as WiseTech Global?
So I think the best answer to that question is that there's no one skill, but I had a deep curiosity and a desire to learn and understand and to solve problems, and that's equipped me very, very strongly through life. And so I've always jumped into something in order to find out how to do it, learned as quickly as I possibly could, read, talked, and learned from other people, and then applied that learning iteratively, making some mistakes along the way, but not big ones, and then getting that perfected and moving on to the next problem or opportunity. So my master's degree was an interesting example of this. I really enrolled in the degree because I wanted to do one marketing subject, and I wasn't really going to do the degree, just wanted to do one subject. But it turned out to be so interesting that I decided to do the whole thing, and I decided to write my business plans as assignments and submit them in the guise of an assignment for the subjects I was doing. And that was an incredibly powerful journey because I was able to go back to work, having done a subject or a lesson, and talk to people and start doing things immediately. And that iterative idea about learning and applying became very powerful. And I've learned that my biggest skill is the ability to be curious and to learn quickly and to constantly ask challenging questions of myself and to challenge whether I can do things and how I can do things and how to drive things forward. And you know, I work with many people that have those same personality traits. The people in technology are very smart, they're well educated, they're they're lovely, mild people, just like everybody else. They want to do something that is valuable and interesting, but they have curiosity, they have passion, they have drive, they have intelligence, and that really does work for a technology company.
Absolutely. I guess we'll talk more about WiseTech and the people, especially the staff that you guys have. What skills do you look for, or what skills, I'm sure that not exactly you're doing the searching anymore, but what skills would you look for if you were to employ more staff?
Well, as a matter of fact, I try to meet as many as possible of our new staff because it's a growing company. We do put a lot of people on. I work very closely with my talent acquisition team, and we look for a couple of very specific things. First of all, you've got to have some interesting technology, and that is usually proven by having a degree in computer science or something around technology. But it's not the only way that you would think of a high quality person, high value person. We do look for people that are intelligent, that are curious, that are self-starters and learners, that can solve complex problems and that have a desire to push through to a solution for something. Because almost every good technologist that I know likes to find problems and then solve them. It's actually kind of fun. It's like a big chess game or puzzle. I really like the work because I'm constantly confronted with things that aren't as good as they should be in the world and driven to make them better. And in doing that, I've created a value, I've changed the world for the better, and I've done something very enjoyable for myself. So I think that curiosity is a really, really important point. That innate learning ability is an important point.
Absolutely. How long did it take to build WiseTech? Because I know that you built it basically from the ground up.
Well, I guess I'm what you would describe as a serial entrepreneur. And I started with a small business repairing musical instruments, taught myself how to run that business. I then built a business that made entertainment equipment because that was more scalable than my two hands fixing guitars. And I learned more about management and more about technology, and I did a lot of the work myself then. I had staff, but I am always very engaged. I then became a very senior R&D manager in a company that I invested in that was in the entertainment industry, and I was their R&D leader, and I had a number of engineers working for me, and I learned a number of new skills there. And then I learned about computer distribution and how you manage wholesale and very large businesses, very high volume businesses, and that was another business. And then I started the business that became WiseTech Global, and you can think of WiseTech as really three phases. The first phase was getting it to be a successful business in Australia. I originally thought it was going to be successful in Sydney. It became very successful and we became the major supplier in Australia very quickly. Then I realized that we came to the edges of our border, and I realized that being an international business was another level of challenge. And so I pushed. We got into New Zealand and into Singapore, and then I realized we needed to do more. We then sort of reinvented ourselves in 2004 and became very international. By 2006, we had offices in the US and in Europe. And by 2007, we were winning big business. We grew very rapidly. There was a previous crisis called the global financial crisis that a lot of you probably don't remember or know about because you were possibly too young. But we did extremely well in that global financial crisis. We grew the business very rapidly. We were a solution to a lot of problems that were occurring during that crisis, and that got our business to global scale. And then the next step was to how to take the business to the next level and make it a large public listed company with a really, really big global footprint. And that was kind of the phase 3. That's the phase we're on now. We've been listed since April 11, 2016. And the company's grown about 4 times the size in the previous 4 years. So we're growing very rapidly, and we're continuing to drive towards that. So there's none of those things. There's no one answer to that question. There's no one action I did, and there's no one piece of learning that got me there. But that curiosity and the ability to learn and to keep pushing myself and driving and be resilient about facing problems and solving things is really the secret sauce. And if you can develop that in yourself and you can keep yourself interested and passionate, you'll be successful.
Yes, the secret sauce. I don't know about that. Finally, we just got time for hopefully one more question. Have you always been a confident person, or has your confidence grown as a result of your success? Did you ever experience something like imposter syndrome when you were starting out?
Not specifically imposter syndrome, but I remember being, before I started playing music, as I started playing, I started getting up on stage and having to play with bands and in front of people, and I was incredibly shy and very, very, I guess, very frightened about the experience, and I couldn't talk to an audience, I couldn't sit in front of a microphone, and I was very introverted. But again, this was a problem to solve, and so I pushed myself and I became capable of being an entertainer. And then when I started the guitar repair business, I had to talk to customers and I had to develop those skills. And so this was just a learning continuum. I became less and less shy and more extroverted and more confident in myself. Another thing that happened was I constantly challenged myself. I remember thinking many times, I remember saying to people, yes, I can do that, and thinking to myself, I really don't know how to do that. And then going away and setting myself the challenge of figuring out how to do it before anybody found out that I didn't know how to do it. And it was an interesting thing because I learned that learning things is actually pretty quick. If you're motivated and you've made a commitment and you're resilient, you learn quickly because you just have to. There's that famous saying that necessity is the mother of invention. And I many times had to deliver something. I made a promise that I'd do it, and I just found a way to do it. And that happened time and time again. And each time it happened, I became more confident about my ability to apply myself to a problem and solve the problem. And these days with Google and with Wikipedia and with lots of online capabilities, you can really find a solution to things, or find somebody else that's done something that you can learn from, and then fuse that solution into something you're trying to solve, and to find a new way to make a new thing better. And I just think we're in an age where learning is an incredibly powerful capability that we can do, as long as we focus, as long as we're resilient, as long as we're passionate and drive ourselves.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking some of your time out of your really busy schedule actually today to speak to our students across the country. I really appreciate it, Richard.
Thank you very much.
As with previous weeks, Richard's questions that he couldn't get to will be posted on www.thebigdayin.com.au at a later time. Next up today is Curtis. Curtis works in the Research and Development Department at Animal Logic. He's a software engineer and is part of the team which builds the renderer, which turns digital assets such as characters, props, and environments made by artists into realistic images, which make up every frame in feature films. So please join me in welcoming our next presenter for today, Curtis Black from Animal Logic, presenting Movie Magic, the technology behind storytelling.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm really grateful to be here as well to share my experience in technology and my career so far with you all, and hopefully give you a bit of an insight into the types of roles and challenges that we face behind the scenes in movie making. So just before we start, I'm really curious, let us know in the chat if you can, if you've heard of Animal Logic, and if you know that we make feature films here in Sydney. And if you do know any of them, please let us know in the chat as well which ones you've seen or have heard of. And while you're doing that, I'm going to give you a little bit of an answer to that question by showing you some of our work. So enjoy.
Oh my goodness. This usually works. Huh?
Oh yeah, now it's a party.
Go get him.
Dad?
Lloyd?
You with me?
Yeah, absolutely. Always.
Of course.
Love you guys.
Did you just wink at him?
There's a lot of things they can do that you don't know about. A lot of things.
So yeah, I don't know how many of those you've seen before. Certainly when I saw that trailer or that show reel for the first time, there were some that I was even surprised that we as a company have done in the past. So Animal Logic, we're an animation and VFX company. We've been around since 1991. Started off doing small kind of contracty jobs here in Sydney, and then have since grown to TV segments, advertisements, and then that's even grown even further to full feature-length films over the past 29 years. And it's grown out of Sydney into, we have a production office in a studio in Sydney and in Vancouver, and also LA contacts for the Hollywood connections. And depending on how many films we're working on at a particular time, we can have anywhere between 200 and 600 staff. So if we may be only working on one film at the moment in one of our Sydney or Vancouver offices, it might be as around 200, 250. I think at peak, when we had a production going in Sydney and Vancouver at the same time, we had about 650 staff working simultaneously, which was a huge collaboration. And one of our proudest moments is the international recognition we got for the movie Happy Feet there. Me personally, I'm a software engineer in the research and development department here. I work on the tool which produces the frames which make up the images, like the images of the film. This is a piece of software that does a physics simulation of the light and photons bouncing around the room, coming from the sun or from the lights, reflecting off surfaces like mirrors, your skin, some paper, through glass, all of that physics simulation to then arrive at the camera and produce a realistic image. I didn't kind of go directly into this though. Like I went to University of Sydney and did an undergraduate degree in physics. And that was just my interest at the time. When I left school, I was really interested in physics, how things work, like the mathematics of all of the physical laws in the universe. And I really just wanted to understand all of this stuff. So it was really interest driven at the time. And then I remained interested in that and went on to do a PhD in it. And at the time when I was doing that, as well as my research PhD topic, I was also kind of interested in how computers can be used to simulate these things that I've been learning about at uni. And this kind of led me to just making a little hobby project of mine, actually, like to make a piece of software that could kind of do this stuff. And I was fortunately helped by the fact that at uni I did a few software courses. So it made it easier for me to get into that and kind of understand the programming side of things and how to do all of the coding. And then I made this little toy software that could kind of do that, and then that really got me interested. And then I kind of from there thought, what companies could do this? And it turns out that this piece of software is used by pretty much all of the big film studios at the moment. Or this type of software is used by all of the big film studios to make their movies. So I naturally kind of gravitated towards this role over time and found Animal Logic. Taking a bit of a step back though, if you don't know exactly what VFX is, we kind of like to think of it as it's the magic of films. It's all of the things that we add into films or create inside films which enable really expressive storytelling. So it could be anything from small digital enhancements, little touch-ups, little additions to a live action film, or it could be an entire world built from scratch in 3D with a computer. So an example of the first one would be the pitch you see here, Peter Rabbit. This is the film that has come straight out of the camera with the props that they used on set to kind of give the actors a feel for what's going on. And then we go and add the digital enhancements which replace those things with the digital characters, in this case the rabbits and the other props. Or it could be an entire world, like for example the recent Lego movies entirely created in 3D. And the driving force behind all of this is really, and has for a long time been, expressive storytelling. People just love telling stories to encapsulate and communicate ideas. It's a huge part of our culture, and that's what drives visual effects, to enable all of these new and even bigger creative ideas to be able to be told to wider audiences. If you're a really creative person, you have this really imaginative idea for a world and some characters that you want to share with people, you might not be able to do that just by filming real life people and actors. You might need all of these extra tools and enhancements to really tell that story in its full potential to your audiences and show it on a big screen. What goes on behind the scenes is it's really a collaborative process. It's made up by hundreds of people, like I mentioned, 200 to 600 people at a time in any one facility. And they've got a huge range of backgrounds. So I myself have a physics background, but a lot of people have maths, engineering, and software engineering backgrounds, and that's just on the technical side of things. From the artistic side of things, people have experience in a lot of different artistic software, or even not software, just actual real physical artistic medium. And the reason it's so collaborative is just because the drive to tell more realistic stories is something that is a trend in Hollywood movies at the moment, because people kind of like to see realistic things so that they don't break their immersion when they see those things on screen. And it's one of those interesting industries where you can tell that we've done a good job in what we do if you can't tell that we've done anything at all. It's really a funny thing. If you can't tell that rabbit is a 3D rabbit, then we've done our job well, and we're very happy with that. Maybe the rabbit is an obvious example because they don't behave that way, but a lot of things in these movies are things you may just not have even noticed would have been 3D. And it's for many reasons. Maybe it's too dangerous for the actors to be involved in. It costs too much to do that in real life. If you don't want to blow up a building and pay for that building in real life, maybe you just want to animate it or simulate it and put that in as a special effect in your movie. So yeah, I just really want to highlight that it's a huge collaborative team with many diverse backgrounds, and I'll come to a few of those soon. So because you may not know the exact details of all of the kinds of things that go on behind the scenes, because like I said, if we do our job well, you don't know that we've done anything at all. But we actually do a lot of stuff behind the scenes to get to those points on film. So on the right, I've just got went to all of the roles that we have currently active at Animal Logic and kind of tried to categorize them. So from the technical point of view, we have roles like my position as software engineer. We have IT and render wranglers. These are all people with technical backgrounds. They understand software, how it works, can make changes to those software depending on artist needs. On the creative side is the artists themselves, the people producing the content and using the tools that we create to make these films, and all of the other production side as well. And then interesting that there's this kind of overlap. I'll get to it a bit later on as well, but effects artists are the people who have a bit of an artistic background and also a bit of a technical background, because effects is in this weird zone where it requires a lot of real world simulation of physics to achieve, but also it's directed by the art directors as well, so it has to find that balance. And as well, we have all of these other roles as well, which kind of fit in various places. And actually, this split is kind of a little bit of a fun fact, a bit of trivia, is kind of the driving force behind the name Animal Logic as well. The animal refers to the intuitive aspect of problem solving. You know, in creative fields, you rarely ever go from A to B, find the solution. You always iterate, you go back and forward. And so the people who do that well, they have a good creative intuition for how to get to the result that they want. And the logic side of things is about the technical, the problem solving. Can you find logical solutions, easy to use for your artists? So what I've got here on the left is a bit of a flow diagram of how we go from a story, a concept, through all of the departments within Animal Logic to get to the end of a feature film. So it starts with a story. Like I mentioned, everything is guided by rich creative stories which have good messages in them. And the very first step after we have a story that we would like to proceed with is to define the creative vision for that. So in that case, there's a lot of artists who, if you're the type of person who is good at taking your imagination of some kind of thing and putting it down visually to show to others, this is the kind of role that might be interesting for you. It's this role of portraying these worlds to the rest of the company and the people who will use that as reference images to create the further artwork and the models, assets, and everything that comes after that. After that creative vision is defined, usually the first step is to model that into 3D. So to take that vision of what it might look like and start turning those things into digital assets. So in this case, we have Peter Rabbit's jacket. It was modeled as a computer 3D mesh, and this is the first look at what it would look like later on. You can see that here. It's also in the film as well, with a lot of extra steps. But this is just to highlight that the first step is just to make the physical shape and the look of it. And actually, one of the pieces of software that we make here internally takes this 3D model of the jacket and actually converts it into all of those weaves and stitches. That jacket you see on screen is not a 3D model of bits of geometry. It's actually millions of stitches of individual weave that make up all the different aspects of the jacket. So the buttons, the side stitching, around the collar, they're all actually different stitches, and there's about a million of them in that jacket there. So these artists create the 3D models, and after that happens, there's another department called surfacing, and these are the people who have a good understanding of physical materials in the real world. They will take an empty model, like the top left, the model of the pig, and they'll add on top of that the surface which accurately models what it would look like in the real world. So in this case, this pink plastic with a little bit of specular kind of sheen on it, but it's a little bit transparent in a few cases because of the thinness of the plastic. These are all of the traits that surfacing artists look for to try and have a lot of attention to detail to match digital to real world kind of appearances of things. And also they're good at creating textures and things like that. You see the bottom left example, a bunch of textures go in as inputs, and they create the conditions which produce accurate lighting output once we actually render that piece of material. And my favorite is to do with fur and feathers. So we have surfacing artists who sit there and they digitally groom all of these models. So much like you would brush your pet, these people get to digitally brush their animals to define the feathers and the direction, the density, and the shape of all of those feathers or fur in the case of Peter Rabbit, for all of the characters and assets. At the same time that this is happening, the rigging department is understanding the anatomy of those characters and putting in place a framework for animators to later on give life to these characters. So much like a character will have a skeleton, that skeleton has to be defined per character. It would be different for a rabbit, an owl, a person, and a lot of understanding needs to go on behind the scenes to understand how these animals move. For example, like all of those animals will move differently and they require different joints, different ways, they have different habits and behaviors. So understanding that goes into this process. And you can see on the bottom right, the tools that we use to convert those behaviors into mathematical models of how those characters move. So you could see that if you were using this program, you could click and drag any of those circles to perhaps rotate the hips, rotate the legs or the arms or the head, and move it around in ways that are intuitive for the artists. And once those two stages are done, we go through combining all of that stuff into the shots. So a shot is any particular sequence. In this case, the shot contains the Emmett character standing on top of the house spaceship itself, the background and the lighting effects. These are all things which you need in the shot to be able to produce it further. So there's teams involved in pulling all of that information, those digital assets together. And after they're all together, we go to the layout department, and you can kind of think of them as like the people responsible for digitally framing a shot. So if you had a camera in real life, you would frame it so that you provide the most dramatic emphasis on your character or the situation and really highlight what the director is going for. The same thing has to happen digitally. If you want to emphasize a particular character or something in a frame, the layout department defines the camera, in that sense. So, and you can see in this case, the framing is just behind the characters looking over the marketplace while they're spying on what's going on. And after that is done, animation get to give life to these characters using those rigs that were previously defined. In this case, the picture in the bottom left is an example of one of the tools that we've made for animating Lego faces. So you can see that what happens is an artist can work in 2D to define the shape. They can give it the eyes, the eyebrows, and mouth, and they can sculpt that in 2D. And at the same time, they can see that be projected onto the 3D character that they're animating. So it allows them to work in an intuitive way in 2D, and animating in 2D, and then having their work be moved over to the 3D world. And they also do use all of those rigs to define the character movement as well as the facial features. And after that is the effects department. So this is, like I mentioned, that this department which kind of sits in an interesting place between creativity and technical. So the reason is because a lot of these things require a bit of physics or real world simulation to accurately portray. For example, that explosion in the bottom left, you could imagine an artist sitting there animating all of those bricks flying off into the world as the explosion takes place on the ground. But you as an audience member watching might feel that maybe something was a little bit off. It didn't look exactly right, because even though we might not all understand the physical laws of the universe, we kind of have a pretty good intuition of what physically makes sense and what doesn't. And we're very easily able to spot these things if they don't look quite right. So what we do instead of getting artists to animate these things is we combine the animation with the computing power to do a simulation of these things. So what would happen in this case is each of those bricks would be placed next to the explosion simulation, and the simulation would project them out into the world in a way that makes physical sense. It's not always real physical sense. You can see in the example on the right, we don't really have many particle beams being shot at characters in real world, but say you could define physics for that. This is what it would look like if you could define the physics plus a little bit of an art directed guide to it. So the director defines the look of what it roughly would look like, and then the effects artists take that look and convert it into a physical model they can simulate so that it can produce that same effect on the screen. And after all of these processes are done, we have, for the most part, all of the features available to produce the final look. The last part is adding lighting. So if you're in a 3D world like Lego, you have a bit of creative freedom to go for some really fun looks like this. But if you're working on a shot like Peter Rabbit, you might need to more focus on matching the real world lighting conditions on set with what is in the 3D world at the same time. So I'd like to share with you also what R&D do to, actually, how long is this video? It goes for 2 minutes. Actually, I'll show this. We have time for this. So this is all of those processes as a specific example for Peter Rabbit. So enjoy this one as well.
Norman, are your eyes cobalt or winter blue?
Winter blue.
That's what I thought.
I thought you
Eyes cobalt or winter blue?
Winter blue.
That's what I thought.
You're mine now, Rabbit.
Thomas, are your eyes emerald or seafoam green?
Seafoam green with a hint of battleship grey, don't you think?
Yes, he agrees.
I thought so.
You're mine now, rabbit.
Thomas, are your eyes emerald or seafoam green?
Seafoam green with a hint of battleship grey.
I thought so.
You're mine now, rabbit.
Thomas, are your eyes emerald or seafoam green?
Seafoam green with a hint of battleship grey.
I thought so.
That was a good demonstration of all of those processes in action. I haven't touched on research and development yet, and the reason is I wanted to show all of those other departments first to then highlight that the research and development department, the area that I work in, we provide the tools for all of those departments, and they all have different needs on the artistic side and the technical side. And we ourselves come from a lot of different backgrounds. We're engineers, we have physics or maths degrees, but really what drives most of us is our passion for problem solving and providing kind of good solutions to artists who then go on and use them to their vision. Yeah, we make a lot of different tools. So for example, the FX simulations, we use those to animate really complex physical situations, fire, smoke, and wind and water, all those things that we can't really animate ourselves, but we need computers to do them for us. And myself, I work in the renderer, which draws those images using the physical simulation of the light bouncing around the room. I'd like to also mention that if you are interested in any of these areas, we do run work experience weeks, I think twice a year. And also we also have internships occasionally, and also UTS Animalogic Academy is also a great resource for these things. There was a question in the previous talk about what do we look for, and it depends on which area you go into, but it really, these are probably the main areas. So from a technical side of things, we look for software engineering skills, physics, maths, understanding of computers and technology, but I don't want to underestimate the necessity of these other soft skills as well. Collaboration and teamwork and problem solving, creative thinking, working with teams is a huge part and is very necessary to the work we do as well. So thank you all for taking the time to be here today. I'm going to try and take as many questions as I can in the time we have remaining.
Yeah, no, thanks for presenting, Curtis. We'll have time for hopefully a few questions. So I guess firstly, what qualifications do individuals require if they actually want to enter the industry as a whole? So do you prefer university or TAFE or any sort of qualification or degree when looking at that?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on which area you're interested in. I mostly have experience with the technical side of things. So if you're that kind of focused, then I'd say any of the software engineering, computer graphics degrees, physics, maths, or even just other general engineering degrees are kind of applicable. They all have things to offer. What kind of underlies all of those things is the desire to problem solve in any given situation. So if you're that minded, you like to solve problems technically, then probably whatever you do will give you those right set of skills to approach us and hopefully one day get a job with us. I came from the physics background, which is not directly related to software engineering. So with this in mind, maybe in hindsight, if I wanted to go here, I might have tried to take a more direct path through a software engineering or computer graphics degree. But they all seem to work for the most part. Yeah.
Wonderful. And we have a lot of questions about what movies that you've personally worked on. What movies could we have seen that your work has actually been applied to?
So I joined the company 2 years ago. At the time, we were working on the Lego Movie 2. So that was my introduction actually to the whole visual effects industry, adding new features and tools that was used for that Lego Movie. After that, I worked on Captain Marvel. I think you might have seen some of those shots in there at the time. I was one that I was involved in. And recently, which unfortunately due to the current situation hasn't been put out in cinemas yet, but Peter Rabbit 2.
Wonderful. Thanks for taking your time out of your day, Curtis, to actually speak to everyone as well. Cheers. I actually had no idea how much software and how much physics went into making some of my favorite films. So it was really fascinating to hear about your work at Animal Logic and how that enabled the creative output of others.
Great, thanks.
Along with Richard, Curtis will be answering all the remaining questions that he can, and we'll post those responses on the Big Day In website at a later time. Don't forget also to check out the ACS Foundation Career Wheel if you want to find out more about the variety of roles in technology. The link will be on your screen now. We'd also like to thank all our sponsors who made this week's virtual Big Day possible, along with our two amazing presenters, Richard and Curtis. We hope you learned something new about IT pathways at today's virtual Big Day In. This is the last virtual Big Day In for this term, but next term we'll kick off with a bang, featuring Tim Kitchen from Adobe and Ben Harrington from Defence Force Recruiting. The link for next term's session on the 29th of July with Tim and Ben is on your screen now. And we'll also email this link to all your teachers for those of you who are still watching at home. Don't forget, if you want to rewatch this presentation or presentations from past weeks, they'll be posted on our website later today at www.thebigdayin.com.au. Just remember to go at the top and click the past events tab. I look forward to seeing you all next term on the 29th of July at 11 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time. Until then, have a wonderful term break and stay safe.